Akaza has been defeated, and after the onion-cutting fest of the theater, I have decided to wipe off my tears and, as a tribute to the all-encompassing hero that was pushed to become one of the most hated villains in anime history, measure his strength. Well, physical strength, of course, because Akaza's moral strength was through the roof during the last scenes of the movie. Let's get on with it. We're going through 10 sections to map out Akaza's powers: physical strength, speed and reflexes, regeneration, endurance, combat ability, blood demon art, ranged attacks, adaptability, weaknesses, relative scaling, and a secret final section, which you'll find out at the end of the video. When we look towards Akaza's physical strength, we can easily tell that's the P of his powers. He is, by far, the single most physical strength-oriented character in this series. Even when he was still a human, he was aptly able to take on men stronger than him, and later went on to learn a style of martial arts that was designed to overpower swordsmen with sheer strength. And if you compare his later fights, after he was turned into a demon, he had inflicted a serious handicap on his strength by not consuming women, who are known to be more nutritious to demons. We can say that Akaza was a pillar that only few stood tall against, and his thirst for strength was unmatched. This directly leads us to the second criterion of speed and reflexes. Now, the Rengoku and Akaza fight, apart from being beautifully animated and tear-jerking, was also one of the best tests of speed and reflexes in the world of Demon Slayer. I'd rank Akaza quite high, but certainly not at the top because we do have characters like Muzan, Kokushibo, and hell, Yoruichi, who'd be better suited for speed, as 2 out of 3 of them have refined breathing techniques. But still, Akaza's fast, and if someone other than a Hashira were to face him, they'd be mincemeat before they can even realize that he has a basketball for a head. Just kidding. And speaking about speed, we have to discuss a skill that's kind of native to only demons, if you don't count the breathing techniques that help the body heal. Yep, we're talking about regeneration. Once again quoting Rengoku, after he saw Akaza heal his split hand in an instant, he commented on how his healing was superior to whatever he'd seen so far, also adding to the fact that Akaza is one of the demons that can withstand a beheading. His regenerative abilities are at the top along with Muzan and Kokushibo. But also, as we've discussed previously, him not consuming women is still a handicap in his regenerative abilities. And we can't say how much more they would have been enhanced if Akaza had started clapping cheeks. You know, demon style. Next up, endurance. Now, up until the Swordsmith Village arc, we were of the thought that demon stamina is infinite, but Hantengu busts that myth while using 3 of his forms simultaneously, while he was fighting Mitsuri as Zohakuten and cowering away inside Urami at the same time. We, for the first time, saw a demon come to his limits. If you remember the last scene of the Swordsmith Village arc, Hantengu knew he was going to gas out as Zohakuten was using a lot of his stamina, and Urami was burning beyond regeneration, which would mean his death was inevitable if he didn't consume humans. Similarly, Akaza must have also had similar endurance, but due to him honing his martial arts as a man and later for hundreds of years as a demon, we could hardly see it. But what we actually see in Akaza's style is his combat skills. There is no doubt, and I could say this with a certain guarantee, that there is no character above Akaza in combat skill. Now, most of you guys might have furiously rolled your eyes and started typing that Yoruichi is the best. Look, I get it. He invented the breaths and is the cornerstone of Demon Slayer forms. But his combat techniques, even from a time when he was a demon, have been elite. He pummeled a whole dojo into minced meat with his bare hands alone. And that too when he was still a human. The massacre was so brutal that it made Muzan think of a demon he had created and forgotten about. That's some serious plot point D writing. So when it comes to combat skills, Akaza is the best, but there are things Akaza is not the best at least according to me, and that is his blood demon art. Now, Akaza's blood demon art, Destructive Death, is just an extension of his Soryu-style martial arts. No fancy fiery blasts or roots growing out of the ground. Just simple and strong shockwaves that make the force of his punches travel from his body to the opponents, skipping the whole body-to-body contact thingy. I know it's boring, but it's practical to an extent, given Akaza is a close-ranged fighter and demons are most vulnerable to slayers at close range because, you know, they have their necks within reach of the slayer swords at close range. And talking about range, let's just get the next part about ranged attacks out of the way as well. Akaza has the worst ranged attacks when compared to all the upper demons. Gyotaro and Daki had blood sickles and their scarves, respectively, while Gyoko had his poisonous fish and octopus jars. Hantengu had a whole triad of ranged attacks, whereas Kokushibo and Doma's whole fighting style is based on ranged combat. So when we look at Akaza's range of fighting, it's pretty limited to close or medium range. Well, he doesn't really need the long range anyway, as his love for fighting and honing his craft trumps his fear of getting beheaded. So we'll give him that. Next up, adaptability. Akaza is a master martial artist, but if I'm being honest, he's a generational talent, even as a human. Someone who's above art styles and disciplines. Someone whose love for fighting is so pure that it transcends his consciousness. The best example of Akaza's adaptability was shown when he decided to sever his hand and get out of Rengoku's grip during the Muzan train arc to save himself in seconds. Later, when he's fighting Tanjiro and 𝐥𝐢𝐤𝐢𝐬𝐷 in the Infinity Castle, he has to up the ante several times because he's facing a dual Hashira threat, something the other moons have failed in doing. So Akaza's adaptability is one of the best in the verse. Now that we've talked about almost all the criteria that give Akaza his strength, let's talk about his weaknesses. We all know that all demons are weak against sunlight, so obviously Akaza is as well. However, to everyone's surprise, when Tanjiro and 𝐥𝐤𝐤𝐬𝐷 cut off his head, Akaza showed signs of regeneration, leading us to the fact that, much like Muzan, he had also outgrown the classic Hashira beheading. But however fast and unique his healing was, it hadn't managed to purely heal his heart that had been crushed after his fiancé and master's death. That became his undoing at the end. Although if you were to ask me, what if Akaza had not fallen into the good graces of his traumas at the end and had given up fighting? How would he have been defeated then? I believe Tamayo's aging and anti-healing medicines that immobilized Muzan would have come in handy for all the upper demons if that were the case. And don't forget Doma's death. That could have been on the cards as well. But relatively, how high would I rank Akaza? I mean, relative to the other strong characters in the series? See, we all know Yoruichi is at the top of the food chain, followed closely by Muzan, then Kokushibo, Doma, and him. Now, please don't come at me with forks because it was clarified by Gotoge Sensei himself that the three upper moons cannot be defeated by a single Hashira at any point, even with a Demon Slayer mark. So keeping even 𝐿𝐽𝐻 above Akaza would be a disservice. But just for the fun of it, why don't we look at how all the Hashiras would perform one-on-one with Akaza? Starting off with the man 𝐿𝐽𝐻 himself, 𝐿𝐽𝐻 would make the fight the most difficult for Akaza, as he's used to keeping demons afar and fighting at range, while Akaza is a close combat fighter. I can see this fight at a stalemate and only ending when 𝐿𝐽𝐻's stamina runs out. Now, we know all of you don't want to revisit the Akaza vs Rengoku fight, but what if it happened after he had awakened the Demon Slayer mark? Well, the fight would have gone in a very different direction. Rengoku would come very close to cutting Akaza's head off. And if we're talking about the same situation as the Muzan train, there is a very good chance Akaza would have been exposed to the sun. However, what would have happened if 𝐥𝐤𝐤 had fought Akaza alone? We recently saw his skills in tandem with Tanjiro, but alone, his attacks would lose flavor soon. Even if 𝐥𝐤𝐤 uses his 11th form and goes full defensive, he'd still be overwhelmed by Akaza. With the next opponent being Mitsuri or hell Shinobu, we'll never know the outcome. It's stated that Akaza doesn't eat women, but we still don't know if he would stop himself from killing one as well. So let's just mark it as we don't know. 𝐿𝐵𝐼's fight with Akaza would be the juiciest. Akaza, who believes in straight brawls of strength combined with technique, would have trouble against 𝐿𝐵𝐼, who's all about technique, but only the ones that follow evasion and asymmetry cuts. Akaza, who spent his life dealing with normal swings of swords, would be bamboozled when he fights 𝐿𝐵𝐼, but sooner or later he would defeat the snake-like swordsman. But what about Tokido? How would he fare? Well, Tokido is a prodigy, but given that he was impaled by Kokushibo so easily, I don't see any special skills in him that would say he'll hold well against Akaza. Yeah, he'll fight well and might even pull off some good moves, but in the end, it will be Akaza's night. Moving on, I don't know how Tenjin would fare, but given that we imagine him with a Demon Slayer mark, there's a chance he could somehow beat Akaza's speed. Tenjin is smart, so he would definitely know that he isn't beating Akaza, and if a chance is given to escape, he definitely would. But if not, then he's dying. Finally, how would Shinazagawa fare? Well, Sanemi did prove himself to be as tough as nails, and he is the only swordsman I see other than 𝐿𝐽𝐻 who would come close to or actually be able to behead Akaza. But given Akaza can only die in the sunlight, Sanemi isn't winning this one. Let's aim for 5,000 likes, and YouTube thinks you'll really enjoy this video. See you there in a bit.